Hello. According to YouTube, we are already live 5 minutes early. I just want to make sure that everything is working. Zelda, if you're around, can you hear me? Hi, hello. I'm gonna start in just a minute. Just want to make sure that you can hear me. And how are you all doing? Hello from Alaska. Hello, Eleanor from the Netherlands. Okay, very good. Thank you for letting me know that you can hear me. I guess I'm gonna cut out this intro if this whole thing ends up staying on my YouTube channel. If the conversation doesn't go anywhere, then I'm just not gonna leave the live on my YouTube channel. This is the second time I'm doing a live, and I'm a little nervous about the format, and it's different from a Zoom. A Zoom, you see faces. So here I only see you in the chat. But we have Aloha from Hawaii. Christine, welcome. Welcome, Diana from Missouri. From Williamsburg, Aaron Sauber, all the way from Williamsburg. I think you can hear me. What is this live about? To TH, this live is going to be just a casual conversation about a Netflix show titled Rough Diamonds, which is on the subject of the diamond industry in Belgium, Antwerp, and it features prominently representation of Hasidim and an ex-Hasidic Jew, and I think it would be fun to talk about it, read your comments, tell you what I thought, but we start at 6 o'clock, so we have 4 minutes to kill. Hello, Debbie from Portland, Oregon, and Sherry from Long Island, and DL from Texas. Oh, lovely. We're everywhere. I like it. GLS have asked, do you have a pair of tefillin in the back there? Yes, I do. Let me show you. This is my son's. That's his Hebrew name. So he took it out of the case today. Mile High greetings from Colorado. Nancy, hello. Oh, I have no Netflix, so I have something to learn here. We're going to perform the entire thing for whoever doesn't have Netflix. Hello from Albuquerque, Cindy. Thank you all for coming out and for watching my channel. I've been so moved and so grateful to all of you. It takes a lot of work. I have a couple of videos I think you're going to like that are in the works. It takes a lot of work. And I really appreciate it that people are, you know, when you put yourself out there, you're constantly expecting people to come down your throat. You know how it is on YouTube. Hello from Brazil, Leonardo. And David, thank you. Hello from England. Debbie, thank you for enjoying my channel. And Rock the Pot. Yes, thank you for loving my interviews with Pearl. I love them too. And actually, hopefully, in the next day or two, I'm going to post on my channel a little video asking you for questions to Pearl, because Pearl and I are planning to do a Q&A where Pearl takes your questions. We were discussing that people have a lot of questions. I have told her that people think she should have her own YouTube channel and that maybe that would be a great way to go, but she laughs when I say that. So we're going to do it on my channel. I guess Pearl and I are going to go through your questions and we're going to pick some. I am biased towards the questions that are more sociological, cultural. Um, I think we're going to have a lot of spiritual questions about God and faith, which is something I usually don't explore a lot on my channel. Um, I tend to have a real interest in traditions and faith in a more anthropological bend. So it's going to be really interesting to see a conversation driven by all of you and where you take it. Hello, Florence from Georgia, and Shalom and Aloha from Hawaii, Maryland. Well, Gilded Age says I had family who were in the diamond business in Antwerp, which is a good time to segue us into our segment today, because I'm very much hoping to hear feedback from those who are in the know. So, hello, Chaim Stern. Really happy to see you here. So, welcome everyone. Let's begin. This is a very chill, very light, easygoing live stream. Just trying to see if this is a format I might want to work with more in the future. The hope is to have more of a give and take, hear your thoughts live, hear your input. So the topic today is Rough Diamonds. Rough Diamonds is a new Netflix show that dropped quietly. There wasn't a lot of brouhaha. It is a 8-episode crime show by, as far as I understand, Belgian production team. I know that the writer and the director are Israeli, and they created a story of crime in the Diamond District in Antwerp, Belgium, and the main characters are Hasidic Jews. And I've always been very interested in how media is a vehicle for representation of cultures. And I watched 5 episodes. Full disclosure, I didn't get to watch all 8. I am up to the 6th episode, but I'm hoping we can still have an interesting conversation. As far as I am thinking, this will probably include some serious spoilers. So be forewarned, we might have spoilers. I'm not very good at remembering what you're not allowed to say. So I'm 6 episodes in, finished 5. So, first of all, let's talk about in general Hasidic Jews in the media. It was interesting that when I announced this live feed, some people said, again with the Hasidic Jews, like there is some kind of obsession and hypersaturation of Hasidic Jews in media. I am not sure that that is the case. I don't think I agree with it. I think, considering how interesting it is to work with a conflict of a society that is different yet, of course, very human, I think that it could be mined for a tremendous amount of entertainment. And instead of seeing interesting stories centered in this particular and unusual world, we have seen to date very, very limited tropey stories of a person who's breaking away, the hero who is leaving, the very linear and anticipated narrative that is the conflict between freedom and maybe repression, or freedom and tradition, and the heroine is almost always the one who breaks from tradition or deviates. So I actually think very little has been done in terms of storytelling. You know, when you think about good stories, good TV, it often has world building. It often has fascinating worlds in which relatable human conflict emerges. And oftentimes they're completely fictional world building, but sometimes they are real. And one of those very interesting real worlds is, it could be the Hasidic Jewish world. And yet I have found that we've not really seen that. If you followed my work, you know that I wasn't a huge fan of Unorthodox, which I felt really didn't take advantage of, which I felt was just telling the same story that people are already primed to hear. If you follow my channel, you might see that I collect Hasidic advertisements. And a part of why it interests me is because it's interesting to see the stories that are told within the community, which are of course light because it's advertisements, but I also posted a trailer to a show. They are so different from the stories told on the outside about the same population, and that tells you about how narrow the outside scope of storytelling has been. So at least leaves me with Rough Diamonds, which I thought did a really excellent job centering a story in this particular world. I thought they did a tremendous amount of research. It was very, very obvious. They got a lot of things right, but more so, they didn't come with an agenda. They didn't come to tell you a tale that you might want to hear, but they told a story about humans and they just centered it into this world. And I think that is the difference between storytelling that deserves criticism, like unorthodox, which is just trying to tell you the same trope, and Rough Diamonds, which is simply humans, but those humans happen to be Hasidic. And I think that the show deserves a lot of credit for that. Now let me read some of your comments. What I'm going to do is, if your comments are off topic, maybe they are very interesting, but I'm not going to read them out loud because we're going to try to stay on topic. Um, uh, David said, I did many jobs for Hasidim, starting by getting food stamps for people, but also working for wealthy businessmen, and see many in the community did not know the economic statuses. I don't know what that means, David. Do you mean to say, let me continue reading, but to some extent, you could not tell by looking from a Satmar Hasid, completely living on government and community charity, to a successful businessman, as the poor people usually have reasonably charity, good clothing, and the wealthy often play down their wealth. That is an interesting question. Can you tell wealth in the community? Is wealth disparity as obvious? I think people who have a lot of money try to make statements to that effect. They will maybe make weddings that are extremely extravagant, but when you walk the street, maybe you can't tell. Maybe there's a kind of I think in the community, even if you can't tell through the clothing, you can still tell through social status, through knowledge in the community. So I'm not sure if it's some kind of utopian world where difference between rich and poor is not as exacerbated. I think it is rather a very big deal. I did find really interesting with Rough Diamonds, and I really liked that they portrayed Hasidic men as businessmen instead of Torah Talmud studies, which is how it is in the popular imagination. You know, in the popular imagination, largely the portrayals of media is what people think of the Hasidic Jews in general. If they see Torah and Talmud studies in a movie, that's what they then think is the reality. And when they visit the community, they are also primed to see that as the reality. When they read an article, they have that kind of bias to pick up information that reconfirms that preconceived assumption. So I think it was really interesting with this show. I think is the first show that shows this robust business world. The Hasidic men I know, that we see in the neighborhood, that I know from my family, they are extremely savvy hustlers, ambitious, and it is so not what people think of in the popular imagination. So this show shows men walking into office buildings, interacting with the world. There are also women, one woman, but I thought that was a very interesting representation. Let's see. I'm going to read the comment by I watched maybe 2 episodes, found it boring and shallow, says Chaim Stern. Well, personally, to be boring and shallow, I didn't love the storyline. I didn't think the storyline worked very well, and I didn't. It almost felt like they did so much research on authenticity, but neglected to invest in a really juicy story that you get invested in. There is a part of the story that to me, I almost felt myself drawn into. Here is a person, the main character, Noah, who left the community and comes back to visit his family for the funeral. And there is this friction, this contradiction, this he's an outsider, but he's coming back, and I almost could feel the conflict, but it wasn't fully developed. He also comes with a child, and that child is not Jewish because the child's mother is not Jewish. So here is another opportunity for a huge topic. And they did have, the father didn't accept the grandchild right away, meaning grandfather didn't accept the grandchild who wasn't Jewish, called him the Goyish child, which was very interesting. But I also felt like the representation was perhaps not as the story lacked the full conflict of someone who had left coming back to visit, to reintegrate themselves in the community. It was sometimes too easy, and sometimes you hit that wall. I didn't feel like that was fully. I couldn't connect to it. That's what I would say. I couldn't connect to it. Bringing a child who's not Jewish into the community is also a really interesting topic. And yet that child seemed to have integrated like this. So in the story, we have Tommy, who's not Jewish, who comes with his Jewish dad. So he's not Jewish according to Jewish law. It goes from Orthodox Jewish understanding, definitely goes through matrilineal descent. So if the mother is not Jewish, then the child is not Jewish. So Noah is the main character. He's Jewish, but his child is not Jewish according to the Hasidic community because the mother who passed away was not Jewish. She was Christian. So Noah brings this child, Tommy, into the community, and the community was like largely accepting. And I thought that was, I don't know, I had a hard time imagining feeling that as authentic. Let me see. John Harvey says, does anyone know what community they were meant to be from? I believe Belgium is heavily Satmar, but no hats on the shetels. So the main characters, they seemed a little more maybe modern. The women were just wearing wigs, but Satmar women might wear just wigs with no hats on the wigs. I don't know that means they're not Satmar. I did listen to an interview with the two creators. Let me look at their names. It was written by Yuval Yefet, and the director is Rotem Shamir. I did look at that interview with a Jew in the City, Allison Josephs, where they talked about doing research, and that the Belgian Hasidic community has a very unique thing, according to them, where in Belgium there's a diversity of many different levels of religiosity mixing together. I don't know. I'm not familiar with the Belgian Hasidic community. I only know that my brothers studied in Antwerp and would talk about it, but I really don't know. From what I've heard from talking to friends, it seems Belgium is more of, sometimes because Hasidic communities are smaller outside of New York and Israel, there is a greater diversity of different spectrums of religiosity within Judaism. And it's very interesting to see how they captured it in the show. For instance, the people working in the Diamond District, there are various garbs. There are more modern garbs. There are shaved beards. There are longer beards. There are various gradations of religiosity in the show, which maybe reflects the reality in Antwerp's Orthodox community. I don't know, but maybe one of you will be able to enlighten me. It was interesting to me that all the Orthodox Jews spoke Yiddish in the show, which didn't really make sense to me. Let's see. Marilyn. Okay, Aaron says, so how about all the stories by the Maskilim, such as Shalom Aleichem, Julian Strikowski, and Zabatinsky? What about those stories? When I'm talking about representation, I'm talking about contemporary productions. I'm not talking about Shalom Aleichem stories of Hasidim, which is obviously of an era gone by. So let me hold on. Hold on. I'm sorry. It's a little hard to get the hang of this reading the feed. Not sure if you saw my comments before about the OTD to Employment Network. If sophomore businessmen purposely recruit employees from the OTD community, I don't know. Is that a thing? I have heard from Israelis that they like to hire ex-Haredim because usually ex-Haredim are very hard workers, very ambitious, which might be true. I suppose when you make such a big journey of leaving a community, you probably are ambitious already. Oftentimes it's partly driven by ambition, but also, I don't know, maybe it's you're working extra hard to prove yourself. That's true for me to some degree. Nancy, thank you so much for your kind words, Nancy. Also, growing up in polygamy, hosts are very respectful of the communities, even after realizing, I don't know which channels you are talking about. Polygamy channel sounds interesting. Okay, indeed, and then Rod says, we saw all 8. I thought it was good, but what I didn't like was how the son that left the community, his brother's wife, his ex-girlfriend started becoming worldly, and her children did as well. I didn't see that part because I didn't see all 8 episodes, but what I did see was the brother's wife was babysitting the Gentile Tommy, and Tommy really wanted to go to the movies with Dad, but Dad was tied up in criminal activity. So the Hasidic babysitter, the aunt who was babysitting, who's Hasidic, took all her children and Tommy to the movies, and she was ecstatic about it afterwards. So there's kind of like an opening into the secular world through the ex-Hasidic character, which was interesting. I don't know where they took that story afterwards. Everyone on the outside loves a story of Hasidim who are corrupted. Let's face it, it sells. Leaving one's community is never easy, and feelings can be very, very complicated. One can criticize the weaknesses of a community while simultaneously honoring their strengths. Thank you, Nancy. I mean, I think it's true. It's really difficult. It's a very fine line to walk. I hear criticisms for being too apologetic. I hear criticisms for not being positive enough when I say something that's perceived as negative. And I heard Allison Joseph, when she spoke to the creators of Rough Diamonds, she seemed to be maybe a little critical and put them on the defensive a little, even though I thought the creators of the show seemed to have taken it really seriously. And they tried, as they said, they trusted the audience to be able to understand that you can tell a story about Hasidim, and to some degree the audience understands that this is a crime show. But you still, even when you trust the audience, it's very easy to be criticized. That's my point. Zelda says, I mostly stay away from these programs as usually they are insulting and inaccurate, such as the female detective who insists on going into the shul to investigate a murder. Yeah, they are terrible. They are terrible. I will tell you, I have had a lot of experience. I watched a lot of things. It's like, oh my God, the shaitel coming off the wig scene and all of these tropes, they're very often very bad. And if you want to get a sense of how bad they are, think of comparing them to how the stories are told within the community. And then you start to see within the contrast how tropey the outside representation is. So Ari says, well, not if your eyes are untrained. Aaron says, I understand that this show shows how the son who is not religious is the hero. No, that's not true. The son who's not religious is not the hero. He's involved in criminal activity. He's actually throwing a lot of punches, and I found him to be entirely unlikable, but also pretty unconvincing. He stands at the Shabbos table. The entire family is there, and he doesn't participate in reciting whatever everyone is reciting. That was very unconvincing to me, in part because every ex-Hasidic person I know would be reciting out of habit. Now, that what happened to the character Noah might be true to some people. It is just a world that you are so habitually trained into that I cannot imagine someone returning and not wearing a yarmulke to a Shabbos meal and not singing along with the Zemiras. So I found him to actually be unrelatable, in maybe a little unconvincing, but definitely not portrayed in a flattering way. I don't think it was a good look for him. What do you all think of the Yiddish? Whoever has watched, what did you think of how they did the Yiddish? I thought the Yiddish was very poorly pronounced in many cases. The grandfather character seemed to have gotten it down the best. It was too pure for me. To me, it seemed like a Yiddishist had written it, but maybe that's true for how Yiddish is spoken in Antwerp. It was like these very, very almost Deutschmish, almost German Yiddish words that didn't ring familiar to me. But also the names. Everyone had Israeli names. Everyone had Hebrew names, which was very strange. I didn't think it flied. It flew. Okay. David says, I work for Ostreicher in Bar Park, son-in-law of Schwartz Catering. Yes, I know Ostreicher. Good man, gave me work when I needed it. Humble man. Cindy says, are the women or men who are widowed in the Hasidic community pressured to remarry? I would suppose so. We see it in the show. This woman is widowed and people are suggesting matches. It's done in a little weird, hackneyed way. The matchmaker right away is coming to put pressure. And the way they show it is there is a matchmaker assigned to the widow, which is not how it works. It's like any matchmaker can come with a match. There's not one matchmaker. But yeah, I think this is a very heteronormative world. So I would imagine there would be pressure. Do you think that the writers try to rebuke the community? It might just be seeing some patterns that does not exist. Did you watch it, Ari? What did you think, Ari Bronze? I didn't see the writers trying to rebuke the community. I didn't see it. Sherry Smart says, but the whole Diamond District is run on a handshake. Very hard if you are not used to this type of business. That's what they say. The whole Diamond District is run on a handshake. What I really liked about the show was that it explored the diamond industry, which is in the popular imagination this headquarter for Orthodox Jews to work in. But in this show, they correctly reflect that the diamond industry for Orthodox Jews has very much been dying out. And actually, I'm going to read to you, forgive me, I'm going to read to you a little bit of a very interesting New York Times recent article where they wrote about the Diamond District here in New York City, in Manhattan on 47th Street, and how and why it's been falling. Well, it's really gone from being an extremely important part of the economy to having shrunk to I don't know anyone who makes a full-time living there, and I used to know a lot of people. So let me read to you a little bit of this recent article. Zev Whiteman's angular frame was hunched over his sooty workbench in a cramped diamond cutting shop several floors above the buzz of Manhattan's Diamond District. But his mind was roaming a crystalline chamber, tweaking facets to coax a brilliant symphony of light from the diamond he was working against the cutting wheel. I'm always improvising, always searching for the perfect cut, said Mr. Whiteman, 68, who began cutting in the district 4 decades ago when thousands of jewelry businesses studded a single block on 47th Street between 5th and 6th Avenue. Back then, there were also thousands of cutters like Mr. Whiteman, many of them shaping the perfect diamond from rough stones straight out of mines. Now, Mr. Whiteman says, only a few hundred remain in the district, focusing on repairs, rush jobs, and the kind of high-end work that he does. His dozens of apprentices are gone, and he labors and obsesses over the stones by himself, working at the wheel or solving problems in bed, in the shower, or in stolen overnight naps on his coat on the shop's tile floor. None of his 4 children, nor presumably any of his 28 grandchildren, will follow him into this trade. The death of the diamond district has been foretold for years. Most diamond cutting work has been outsourced to factories overseas. Online shopping has cut into showroom sales. The pandemic lockdown derailed supply and devastated foot traffic. Inexpensive lab grown diamonds, resembling real ones, have rattled a seemingly unshakable diamond economy. Many long standing family shops have downsized or lack succession plans. Booth vacancies in once bustling jewelry exchanges are a common sight. The jewelry district in New York emerged in the 1800s as a cluster of shops in lower Manhattan. Later on, Jewish diamond merchants fleeing Europe before World War II began setting up on 47th Street. Much of the industry's roots in the Orthodox Jewish parts of Eastern Europe is reflected in the block's own vocabulary, largely Yiddish. A strop is a second-rate stone that won't sell. It's chazarai or schlock, garbage. Merchants share a secret code to freely discuss a a customer. I don't know what that word is. A 210 is a warning to keep 2 eyes on 10 fingers when serving potential thief. The secret world is revealed on the upper floors above the showrooms in a honeycomb of cramped workshops, retail stores, and anonymous office suites. Here, the polishers, sorters, appraisers, graders, and bench jewelers toil behind locked double-door vestibules, man straps that allow visitors to be checked before entry and exit. Finally, this is the last bit I'm going to read. Still, the old school barter economy persists. The New York Times was covering how it's becoming less a barter economy, and now a completely different young set of sellers are now selling with TikTok and hip hop proposals and joints, and it smells of marijuana. It's like there's like a new generation of jewelry sellers on 47th Street that are sort of replacing the old Orthodox Jewish diamond dealers. But they say still the old school barter economy exists. Many deals are done on credit, with millions of dollars entrusted to a handwritten memo on a handshake and a blessing of Mazel und Bruche, Yiddish for luck and blessing. You can have a $10 million deal just by signing your name, Mr. Winnick said. Where else can you do that? So it's not quite a handshake. It's a handshake and a signature, but still. Marilyn Man, he says, my father was not Jewish, yet was always called half Jewish. Yeah, I appreciate that. In Orthodox Judaism, it's matrilineal, but this is a very big subject. John Harvey says, I always thought Samoan women would wear a double covering. No, not necessarily. Let's see. I don't know how to read. Wonder if it is accurate to say Hasidim tend to glorify people who beat the system, entrepreneurs, real estate, mafia, drugs, as Hasidim don't go to university or have much secular education. Mafia and drugs? I don't know about that. Yeah, I think the veneration of Trump that is very common in this community is a part of that. I think so. GISF says, is it Yiddish? I think the official language is Flemish. The language of the show is officially Flemish. It is a mixture of Flemish, Yiddish, French, and English. And all of these are together very confusing. You can also watch it dubbed, which is not very well done. Laura says, as someone who's never had contact with the Orthodox community, it's interesting to hear from you if it's accurate or not. I think they really captured some parts of it. Some parts of it, there is, like, for instance, that wealthy Hasidic family has a maid. I didn't feel like, I don't think I know anyone who has a maid. That felt a little TV-esque, but the Shabbos table felt really well done. The synagogue, a lot of it felt really well done. the Yiddish was probably my biggest issue. I was thrown off a bit by the non-Jewish actors playing Jews in a controversial storyline like Rough Diamonds. Like modern-day blackface seems strange, especially because the writers were secular Israel. It's an interesting point. Hello, Cheryl from Georgia. Let me see if I have any other comments. I'm sorry if Laura says, how is Pearl? Do another interview, please. I said at the beginning of this, we'll do a Q&A. I like the fact, Christine says, I like the fact that the character spoke Yiddish and English and French, which is language of Belgium, which made sense since they did business with others outside of their community. Yeah, I thought it made sense. What didn't work so well was sometimes they were talking Flemish at home and then Yiddish to non-Hasidic colleagues. That sounded weird to me. Well, I am going to wrap up this live stream, make it short and sweet. Thank you, Shandy from Montreal, and all of you for your comments. And Shimon, who has seen rich Hasidic people who had a maid. See, I stand corrected. I'm sure you know. I take your word. But I want to thank you all for coming. Please leave a comment to let me know if you want me to do this again. It is very weird to be talking by myself the whole time. I would prefer to do Zoom where I can see faces. Perhaps I'm going to do that in the future. Thank you, Laura. I would love to talk more before I wrap up, anyone else's comments about their experience in the diamond industry, because I was hoping to cover that a little bit more, hear your experiences of what it was like in its heyday. Actually, Aaron says, my father has worked in 47th Street for my uncle till 2008. I think the recession played a big role because people didn't spend for luxurious items. That's probably a part of it. People are still wearing big rocks, so I think a lot of it has become, I think the part where the diamond schleifer, the very skilled diamond cutter, perhaps is not as needed anymore because it can be automated. Maybe that's a big part of it. Anyway, thank you all for coming out. I appreciate all of you and your comments. I recommend you try to watch it. It's not my favorite show. I do think they did a really good job. It seems they put a lot of work into representation. You will learn that Hasidic people are involved actively in the business world. You'll see some traditions. As far as storytelling is like so, but go ahead and try it. Definitely don't get a Netflix subscription on account of one show. Tam Tov, great food in the Diamond District. Thank you. No, I don't know if it's still around, but thank you for the recommendation. All right. Thank you all so much. Gute Nacht. Good night. And keep an eye on, I'll be having a few videos. And as I said, I'll be doing a Q&A with Pearl. So I'm going to be announcing that in the next few days. All right. Good night. Oh, the review on Jewish Matchmaker. Yeah, I was thinking of doing it. I don't know if there's an interest. If there's an interest on Jewish Matchmaker, I did watch a few episodes. We could do that, but I'm not so comfortable with the format of comments. So I would have to figure out how to do Zoom with my YouTube channel because I don't like doing this because I can't see you. I'm just talking. And also because it's easier to have you raise your hand and share what you want to say than reading comments. So if I can figure that out, and if you're interested in Jewish matchmaking, then I might consider doing it and we can chat about it. I see a lot of yeses. All right. We'll think about it. Good night. Thanks for coming, everyone.